They found a woman in a sack, and the child whispered, "Papa, she's my mama." It was the first frost of the year, that pale kind that hushes even the birds. My girl, Sadie, was dragging her little rag doll through the sycamores when she spotted it. A burlap sack snagged in the roots, dark at one end like it had been dipped in blood. I told her to stay put, but she was already kneeling beside it, whispering something soft. When I pulled the knot loose, I near dropped my lantern. There was a woman inside, barely breathing, skin the color of river stones, hair matted with dirt and ash. I thought she was dead till her chest hitched once, like the earth itself was trying to pull her back. Sadie looked up at me, wide-eyed and certain. She said, "Papa, that's Mama." My heart stopped clean. My wife Anna had been gone 2 winters now, lost to fever, or so I'd told myself when the preacher put her name in the ledger. I wanted to tell Sadie not to speak foolish, but the words caught in my throat. The woman's face, though bruised and worn thin, carried some shadow of her, enough to twist a man's faith. I lifted her out, felt the cold weight of her settle against me. She was as light as a sack of grain, bones wrapped in sorrow. The wind blew through the sycamores like a prayer half forgotten. By the time I laid her across the wagon, I could hear hooves on the ridge, maybe hunters or worse. Red Willow didn't take kindly to strays. Out here, a wounded stranger was a question most folks answered with a shovel. Sadie climbed in beside the woman, tucking her doll against the stranger's chest. "She needs me," she said. I didn't argue. The ride home was quiet, but for the creak of the wheels and the girl's small hum, same tune her mother used to sing when the lamps went out. I tried not to listen. At the house, I laid the woman on the spare cot in the barn, stoking the fire till it snapped awake. Her breath rasped through cracked lips, and something in me, something I'd buried with Anna, began to stir. I didn't know who this woman was, or what road she'd crawled from, but I knew I couldn't let her die there. When dawn came, I found myself kneeling beside her, my hand hovering over hers like it might burn me. Sadie was at the door, watching, a smile soft as dawn itself. "She's gonna wake up, Papa, you'll see." I wanted to tell her no, to prepare her heart for what I'd seen too much of, but I couldn't, because in that light, for a terrible moment, I almost believed her. The wind carried the smell of smoke from town. Someone must have seen the wagon last night. Word would spread. I looked at the woman again, then at my girl. I said, "We'll keep her here, just till she can speak." Sadie nodded, proud as if she'd made the sun rise herself. But when I turned back to the cot, the woman's eyes were half open, gray as the morning, and she whispered one word that froze me where I stood. "Jack."
They said she was trouble. He said she was human. By midday, the frost had melted into mud, and so had my peace. Folks in Red Willow always found their way to a secret faster than mercy. I hadn't even finished pitching hay when I saw 3 riders cutting through the meadow, Sheriff Briggs in front and 2 men from town who never rode unless they smelled gossip. The woman, she hadn't stirred since dawn. Her pulse ran weak, like a faint drumbeat fading into sand. Sadie had been sitting by her side, brushing the woman's hair with a chicken feather, whispering songs she only half remembered. I told my girl to stay quiet when the sheriff came. He dismounted with that heavy sigh he used when he didn't want to be cruel, but would be anyway. "Jack, heard tell you brought someone in off the flats. Some say she's bloodied, some say worse." "Found her in a sack by the sycamores," I said. "Didn't see a badge stitched to her. Figured I'd let her live long enough to ask who she was." Briggs spit in the dirt, eyes narrowing. That kind of mercy gets a man questions he can't answer. Behind him, one of the ranch hands, Cal Lister, snorted. "Or gets him shot. You think she's alone, Rollins? Ain't no woman end up tied in a sack without men following the trail." I could feel my jaw tighten. "You done talking?" He didn't move, so I reached for the barn latch. "No one crosses this door till she can speak for herself. If that's trouble, I'll answer for it." Briggs studied me a long while. "You always had a bleeding heart, Jack. You forget what it cost you last time?" "I remember fine," I said, and closed the door on him. The latch slid home with a sound that felt like a vow. Outside, hooves shuffled, and the murmurs rose. Inside, only the faint crackle of the fire and Sadie's small hum. She looked up at me, eyes steady. "You mad, Papa?" "No, darling," I said, "just tired of burying things before they're dead." When the riders finally left, I bolted the door and leaned my forehead against the wood, every muscle humming with the strain of defiance. The woman stirred then. Her lips moved, whispering through the haze of fever. Could have been nonsense, could have been names. I caught fragments: Fire, Ledger, Hollow Creek. I pressed a wet cloth to her brow. Her skin was hot, but her hand, when it found mine, was trembling cold. Sadie crouched beside her, offering a sip of water. The woman's eyes fluttered, unfocused, but for a second they caught the child's face and softened. "You look like—" Then she fell back into silence. The air in the barn thickened, heavy with secrets. Night came early that evening, and I sat watch by the lantern. Outside, I heard someone's boots crunch near the fence, too slow for a passerby, too light for a man alone. I reached for my rifle, heart thudding. Sadie stirred in her blanket. "Papa?" "Hush now. Go on, sleep." A shadow crossed the window then, a long shape, lingering just long enough to mean harm. I rose, every part of me coiled. But when I stepped to the door, the shadow was gone, leaving only a single set of footprints in the frost. They led back toward town, and in the quiet that followed, the woman on the cot breathed one word again, so faint I almost thought it came from memory. "Jack."
She awoke to a child's voice calling her mama and believed it. I don't rightly know when sleep took me. I remember the lantern burning low, the wind rattling the tin roof, and Sadie's hand curled around my sleeve. When I opened my eyes, dawn was bleeding through the cracks in the boards, and the woman on the cot was staring back at me. She wasn't fevered now. Her eyes, gray as storm water, were clear but frightened, like she'd been dropped into a world that wasn't hers. Her voice came soft, raw from thirst. "Where am I?" I poured her a cup and helped her sit up. "My place, Red Willow." Her gaze darted toward Sadie, who was still curled near the fire. "The child, she called me Mama." "She did," I said carefully. "But she's 4. She calls every good thing Mama." That lie hung between us, thin as the morning light. Truth was, Sadie had never called another woman by that name before. The stranger, she frowned, touching her temple like she was checking if her mind still fit. "I don't remember
anything. Only a smell, smoke, children crying, a hand pushing me down. Then she looked at her palms as if expecting burns. Then nothing. Her words struck me strange, too precise for delirium. Still I saw pain behind them, and fear so deep it reached her bones. Sadie woke then, rubbing her eyes. When she saw the woman awake, she squealed and ran forward, clutching that rag doll to her chest. "Mama, you came back!" The woman froze. Then, slow, trembling, she opened her arms. "Maybe I did," she whispered. I looked away, swallowing hard. There was something in that sound, some echo of Anna's lullaby that hit me clean through. Later, after I settled Sadie with breakfast, I went back to the barn. The woman was sitting upright now, studying her reflection in a tin basin. "Do you have a name for me?" she asked quietly. "I could, if you want one." She nodded, eyes fixed on the shimmer of water. "Something simple, something that doesn't belong to anyone else." I thought of the roses Anna used to grow behind the house, wild and stubborn, blooming where the frost never quite claimed them. "Rosie, that'll do." She turned the name over on her tongue, as if tasting it. "Rosie," she echoed. Then she looked up at me with a faint, bewildered smile. "Thank you." Before I could answer, Sadie burst in, clutching something blue in her little fist. "Mama's handkerchief," she said proudly, pressing it into Rosie's hand. "You can have it for good luck." I opened my mouth to stop her. Anna's handkerchief had been all we'd kept, but Rosie was already pressing it to her heart. Her eyes glistened. "It smells like lavender," she murmured. "Anna used to dry lavender by the stove," I said before I could stop myself. Rosie's gaze met mine, and for a heartbeat we both stood there, two strangers bound by the ghost of the same woman. Outside, the church bell tolled noon. Somewhere beyond the fields, a rider's silhouette flashed on the ridge, gone as quick as a thought. Rosie followed my eyes. "Is someone looking for me?" she asked. I don't know, and I meant it. But I felt it then, as sure as winter returning. This woman hadn't just lost her past. Something, or someone, was coming to reclaim it.
The knock came after midnight, and mercy turned to fear. A month passed under frost and thaw. Rosie grew steadier on her feet, tending to the chickens, humming Sadie's tunes while the girl chased sunlight through the yard. For a while, it almost felt like peace. The townsfolk had gone quiet, too quiet maybe, but I told myself the storm had passed. Then one night, long after the lamps were blown out, came the knock. 3 hard raps on the door, sharp enough to raise every ghost in me. I opened it with my rifle half raised. A tall man stood there, hat low, coat dusty from the trail. "Name's Delaney," he said, "detective out of Cheyenne." His badge caught the moonlight like a blade. "I'm looking for a woman, dark hair, mid-20s, might be using a false name." Behind me, I could feel Rosie's breath falter. "What she wanted for?" I asked. He pulled a folded paper from his coat, a poster, edges burned, ink smudged but legible. "Wanted for arson and murder, Hollow Creek Orphanage. The fire took 14 children. Only one woman walked away. Witnesses claim she lit it herself." I stared at the paper, then at him. "That all rumor?" He shrugged. "It depends what you're hiding, Mr. Rollins."
I told him I'd seen no one fit the description. He studied my face long enough to know I was lying, but he didn't press. He said, if she's here, best turn her in before someone else does. Cheyenne's paying more for silence than for truth these days. And then he tipped his hat and walked off into the black. When the hoofbeats faded, Rosie came out from the barn shadows. Her hands were shaking. He knows, she whispered. They always know. Who? Her voice cracked. Men like him. I thought if I stayed dead, it'd stop, but it never does. Before I could answer, she was already running, barefoot, dress whipping through the dark, her outline swallowed by the frost. I snatched a lantern and went after her. The wind knifed through my coat, the field slick with half-frozen mud. I followed her prints past the pasture, down toward the ravine where the creek cut through the bluff. "Rosie!" I shouted. The sound bounced back, hollow. For a moment, I thought she'd vanished again, like the dead do in dreams. Then I saw her, crouched by the edge, trembling. "I can't stay, Jack," she gasped. "If they find me here, they'll burn this place too. They always burn what I touch." I set the lantern down between us, its flame wobbling in the wind. "You think running it'll stop 'em? You run, they win." Her tears glinted like frost. "You don't know what I've done." "Maybe not, but I know mercy when I see it, and mercy don't come cheap, so don't you dare waste it." She looked at me then, truly looked, and for the first time since I'd found her, I saw something like fight return to her eyes. But before she could speak, the lantern light caught movement on the ridge, another rider watching. She followed my gaze, went white as bone. "He found me," she whispered. The wind rose, howling through the sycamores. I turned to face the ridge, rifle in hand. But when I looked back, Rosie was gone.
He carried her from the ravine, as if lifting his own salvation. Dawn came like a bruise across the sky, purple and cold. I'd searched half the night by lantern light, shouting till my throat was raw. When I finally found her, she was sprawled at the base of the ravine, skirt torn, mud streaked up her arms. Still breathing, but barely. For a heartbeat, I thought she was gone for good. Then she shivered, lips parting just enough to whisper my name. I slid down the embankment, mud biting through my boots, and lifted her out of the creek bed. She weighed less than a memory. Each step back up felt like hauling the dead, and maybe that's what it was. Some part of both of us dying and being born again in that cold. By the time I carried her into the barn, the sky had cracked open with sunlight. Sadi stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Papa," she murmured, "you found her?" "Yeah," I said, sitting Rosie down near the fire. "But she found something too." When Rosie woke, her face was gray with exhaustion. I pressed a mug of water to her lips. "Why'd you run?" I asked quietly. She looked away. "Because every kindness turns to ash, Jack. I thought if I left before it burned you too, maybe you'd be safe." I shook my head. Ain't worth a damn without something to keep safe for." She didn't answer, just stared at her hands, filthy, bleeding at the knuckles. Her eyes found the small pin through the stall slats. Inside, the colt Sadi had named Clover was thrashing, tangled in a rope that had slipped loose during the night. The poor thing's leg was caught fast in the trough rail, kicking itself near crippled. Before I could move, Rosie was already there, crawling through straw, murmuring soft like she was soothing a child.
Easy, love, easy now." She wrapped both hands around the colt's trembling neck, whispering nonsense until the animal stilled enough for me to cut the rope free. When it was over, the colt limped to its mother's side, trembling but alive. Rosie sat back in the hay, shaking, tears cutting lines through the dirt on her face. "I don't deserve this, any of it." I crouched beside her, voice low. "You saved something that couldn't save itself. That's what decent folks do. You're already worth more than whatever hell you came from." She looked at me like she didn't believe it, but wanted to, and maybe that's where redemption begins. Sadi came running with a blanket, wrapping it around Rosie's shoulders. "Mama's brave," she said proudly. Rosie smiled through her tears. "I'm trying to be." We sat there in the warm breath of the barn, three broken souls pretending for a moment the world wasn't waiting outside to tear us apart. But peace in Red Willow never lasted long. Through the slats of the wall, I saw dust rising on the southern trail. 5 riders this time, not one, and at their head rode Delaney, the detective, his coat flaring in the wind. I reached for my rifle. "Rosie," I said, "you best tell me everything, right now."
She buried the proof under a tree, and they buried her for it. We spent the night under the cottonwood, far from the house and the law closing in. I'd hidden Sadi at the neighbor's till dawn. She didn't like it, but she trusted me. Rosie sat beside the fire, her hands tight around a leather satchel she'd kept close since the night I found her. "You said you wanted the truth," she murmured. "It's uglier than sin. Truth usually is." She untied the flap and pulled out a small book, its spine cracked, edges scorched. A ledger. I could still smell the smoke on it. "This came from Hollow Creek Orphanage," she said. "I worked there. We were meant to care for the children no one claimed, but the matron and her partners, men from Cheyenne, they sold them, Jack. Sold them like cattle to the mining camps. When I found out, I started writing names down, buyers, prices, dates. I thought if I had proof, someone would stop 'em." Her voice broke. "They found the book before I could send it. They locked me in the storeroom. I heard them strike the match. I kicked through the floorboards, crawled out through smoke and glass. I buried this under the cottonwood near the yard, but the fire spread faster than I ran." She stared into the flames like she could still see it. 14 children, Jack. 14 names that never had graves. I felt something shift in me, a mix of rage and pity that no law could settle. "You didn't burn that place. They did," I said. "They'll never say so. Men like that don't hang for selling souls. They hang the one who tells on 'em." I opened the ledger, the ink warped but legible. The names bled down the pages, each one a wound. In the back, a list of payments, initials signed neat in the corner. One of 'em I recognized. Sheriff Briggs. "God help us," I whispered. She flinched. "He's part of it?" "It looks that way." We sat there, the fire popping between us, the truth laid bare as bone. At last, I reached across and took her hand. She tried to pull back, but I held firm. "You did right, Rosie. The world just doesn't know it yet." Her eyes filled again, not with sorrow this time, but something like relief. "You believe me?" "I believe you. And I reckon it's time Red Willow does too." She nodded, the faintest smile trembling on her lips. "Then we'll have to dig up what I buried." Before she could rise, a voice echoed through the dark from up the ridge, cold, deliberate. "Jack Rollins, by order of the territory, you're harboring a wanted woman. Step aside and hand her over." The firelight trembled. Rosie went still. "Briggs," I muttered. She squeezed my hand once hard. "If they take me, they'll take that ledger too." "Then they won't take you," I said, standing. The rifle felt heavy as judgment in my hands. I turned toward the ridge and raised my voice. "You want her, Sheriff? You best come down here and earn her." The silence that followed was the kind that breaks before thunder. When the law came for her, a little girl's truth stopped the gun. They rode in at first light, 6 men this time, rifles glinting under the pale sun. Sheriff Briggs led 'em, eyes hard as frozen iron. Behind him came Delaney, hat pulled low, expression unreadable. Rosie stood beside me in the yard, wrapped in Anna's old shawl, hair wild from the wind. She didn't tremble anymore. She just looked tired of running. Briggs reined in his horse, voice carrying across the cold air. "Jack Rollins, you're under arrest for obstruction. The woman's wanted in Cheyenne for arson, murder, and flight from custody. Step aside." I raised my rifle, but didn't aim it yet. "You got proof of any of that?" He sneered. "Got a warrant? Got witnesses? That's enough." Rosie stepped forward before I could stop her. "Let me speak," she said. Briggs squinted. "You admitting guilt, miss?" "I'm admitting truth," she said. "I kept a ledger. It names you, Sheriff, your mark, your cut from every child sold off that orphanage before the fire. That's why you want me dead." A ripple went through the man behind him. Delaney's horse shifted, uneasy. Briggs barked a laugh, but it cracked at the edges. "You expect anyone here to believe that?" Before I could answer, a small voice broke through the standoff. "She ain't lying." Sadi stood in the doorway of the barn, uncombed, barefoot in the frost. She clutched the ledger to her chest. "I saw your name, Sheriff, big letters." The world went still. Even the horses quit breathing. Briggs' face twisted red. "That's enough, girl." He swung his rifle toward Rosie. I fired first, not to kill, but close enough to slice the brim clean off his hat. The shot echoed through Red Willow like thunder waking a sleeping town. Doors opened. Faces appeared in windows. The blacksmith, the preacher, Mrs. Dean from the post. Folks had known me since I came to this valley, and folks had never had reason to fear me till now. "Sheriff," I shouted, "you want to take someone in? Take me. But this woman's done more good half dead than you have with a badge." Briggs dismounted, shaken with rage. "You're finished, Rollins." But before he could step forward, Delaney moved his horse between us. "Hold on." His voice was quiet but sharp. "I've seen that ledger. It's real." Briggs froze. "You said you were with me." "I said I was with the law," Delaney replied, eyes never leaving him. "Didn't say which side you were on." The crowd had gathered now, drawn by the noise. The preacher clutching his Bible, the blacksmith holding his hammer. Judgment hung heavy in the air. Rosie looked at me once, then walked past. She stood in the open, wind whipping her hair across her face. "I'll go," she said, "if it keeps this town from bleeding. But I won't hide any more." Sadi ran to her, grabbing her skirt. "No, Mama, don't let 'em." That word, Mama, rang louder than any bullet. Every face turned toward the child. Briggs opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was not fear. It was reckoning. I walked forward then, slow, steady, and knelt in the snow. "Rosie," I said, loud enough for all of Red Willow to hear, "I won't let 'em take what's already mine. Not again." From my coat, I pulled a small silver ring. Anise,
worn smooth with time. I held it out to her, the whole town watching. "Marry me, here, now. Let 'em see what mercy looks like." Her eyes filled, her hand shook as she took it. And as she slid it on, Delaney lowered his rifle, nodding once. "Guess we're done here." Briggs cursed, turned his horse, and rode out alone. The sun climbed over the ridge then, touching the frost like blessing. Rosie stood beside me, ring glinting, child clinging to her dress. But I knew this wasn't peace yet, because even mercy casts a long shadow, and lawmen don't forget when they've been shamed. When the law came for a little girl's truth stopped the gun. They rode in at first light, 6 men this time, rifles glinting under the pale sun. Sheriff Briggs led 'em, eyes hard as frozen iron. Behind him came Delaney, hat pulled low, expression unreadable. Rosie stood beside me in the yard, wrapped in Anna's old shawl, hair wild from the wind. She didn't tremble anymore. She just looked tired of running. Briggs reined in his horse, voice carrying across the cold air. "Jack Rollins, you're under arrest for obstruction. The woman's wanted in Cheyenne for arson, murder, and flight from custody. Step aside." I raised my rifle but didn't aim it yet. "You got proof of any of that?" He sneered. "Got a warrant? Got witnesses? That's enough." Rosie stepped forward before I could stop her. "Let me speak," she said. Briggs squinted. "You admitting guilt, miss?" "I'm admitting truth," she said. "I kept a ledger. It names you, Sheriff, your mark, your cut from every child sold off that orphanage before the fire. That's why you want me dead." A ripple went through the man behind him. Delaney's horse shifted, uneasy. Briggs barked a laugh, but it cracked at the edges. "You expect anyone here to believe that?" Before I could answer, a small voice broke through the standoff. "She ain't lying." Sadi stood in the doorway of the barn, uncombed, barefoot in the frost. She clutched the ledger to her chest. "I saw your name, Sheriff, big letters." The world went still. Even the horses quit breathing. Briggs' face twisted red. "That's enough, girl." He swung his rifle toward Rosie. I fired first, not to kill, but close enough to slice the brim clean off his hat. The shot echoed through Red Willow like thunder waking a sleeping town. Doors opened. Faces appeared in windows. The blacksmith, the preacher, Mrs. Dean from the post. Folks had known me since I came to this valley, and folks had never had reason to fear me till now. "Sheriff," I shouted, "you want to take someone in? Take me. But this woman's done more good half dead than you have with a badge." Briggs dismounted, shaken with rage. "You're finished, Rollins." But before he could step forward, Delaney moved his horse between us. "Hold on." His voice was quiet but sharp. "I've seen that ledger. It's real." Briggs froze. "You said you were with me." "I said I was with the law," Delaney replied, eyes never leaving him. "Didn't say which side you were on." The crowd had gathered now, drawn by the noise. The preacher clutching his Bible, the blacksmith holding his hammer. Judgment hung heavy in the air. Rosie looked at me once, then walked past. She stood in the open, wind whipping her hair across her face. "I'll go," she said, "if it keeps this town from bleeding. But I won't hide any more." Sadi ran to her, grabbing her skirt. "No, Mama, don't let 'em." That word, Mama, rang louder than any bullet. Every face turned toward the child. Briggs opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was not fear. It was reckoning. I walked forward then, slow, steady, and knelt in the snow. "Rosie," I said, loud enough for all of Red Willow to hear. I won't let 'em take what's already mine, not again." From my coat I pulled a small silver ring, anise, worn smooth with time. I held it out to her, the whole town watching. "Marry me, here, now. Let 'em see what mercy looks like." Her eyes filled, her hand shook as she took it. And as she slid it on, Delaney lowered his rifle, nodding once. "Guess we're done here." Briggs cursed, turned his horse, and rode out alone. The sun climbed over the ridge then, touching the frost like blessing. Rosie stood beside me, ring glinting, child clinging to her dress. But I knew this wasn't peace yet, because even mercy casts a long shadow, and lawmen don't forget when they've been shamed.